Hello everyone, so I decided to make a video on my take on why programming is considered to be something that's hard by several people, and at the same time some people will tell you that it's easy, it's not difficult. So of course that is like subjective to each person and what each one of them thinks, but I'll tell you what I think. So for me personally, I think that programming itself, it's not difficult. What is difficult is what programming is about. And programming is all about problem solving. Now, you might be learning how to code and be using it to fix a game, which is something that is fun. And it's not like a problem you're solving by fixing a game that is for entertainment purposes. But the actual action of fixing that game, going through that process where some things don't work and then you have to debug it and figure out how to get it working, all that process is problem solving. And solving problems, when they are simple, is okay, it's not a big deal, but the more complicated they are, the more challenging that is. So that part of programming, which is a very, very important and huge element of programming, I believe is what makes people feel that it's programming itself is hard. But the actual programming is not what is the hardest part or the hard part. I won't say it is easy either. I'll say it depends. So when it comes to, I'll use a real life example to illustrate what I'm trying to say in a easier to understand way for most people. One thing a type of example that I like using is cooking, because first of all, eating is important for people to survive, and cooking is for someone actually to eat. They either have to cook their meal or they have to order their meal, or purchase it from somewhere, or get someone else to cook it. But the thing is, either get your meal from somewhere or make it yourself. So if someone is not ready to, if someone thinks that cooking is hard, so they are not going to learn how to cook, they have two options. No, I guess three options. So one of them is to learn how to cook. The other one is to find someone else to cook it for you as a service, or if like a family member or something, and eat that. Or the third one is just don't eat. But the third one, which is the just don't eat, that is not productive. That is not a way by which you can survive eventually. So it's not like a good option to consider. And that is what happens with programming as well. Like, if you want to fix something, you can actually learn how to code and make it yourself, or get someone else to do it for you, or just don't do it at all. And the hard part when it comes to cooking, for people that don't know how to cook, is not cooking as a whole, but it's the actual process of learning how to cook. When you want to cook something and you don't know how to cook at all, you have to learn how to use the various tools first, and certain ways by which you use those tools. And then after that, you need to understand the ingredients and a lot of concepts, a lot of chemical reactions that happens when you mix different ingredients and how they influence. That is if you want to learn like cooking in a really, really high level, and not just mix anything up or be following someone else's recipe, I guess. But the simplest way is just following someone's recipe. But that too can become something complicated depending on how that recipe was written and what knowledge that the person that created that recipe intended or hoped that the one who followed it had. A lot of books don't really tell you what knowledge you need to have in order to be able to understand and digest what they are going to teach you sometimes. So this is especially something that is true for recipe books, at least. Though for programming books, usually they say, from what I've observed. So when you want to learn how to cook and you don't know how to cook at all, you can learn how to cook something very simple. Someone can teach you how to cook something very simple, such as boiling an egg. That is one of the like simplest things someone can teach someone who doesn't know how to cook. And or the most simplest thing is boiling water for tea, because some people have that challenge that they don't even know how to boil water. So you can make it this simple, or you can actually make it high level complicated. You can ask them to create a very complicated thing, such as croissant. Croissants are like kind of complicated to make, because you need to create the dough, which has a lot of butter and all of those things, the fats and all these rich ingredients. Then you have to like open it thinly and then put more butter and fold it many times and create those layers of the dough that then expand and create, you know, that shape that you see when you open like or split open a croissant in the middle. That thing is quite complicated. So if someone thinks that cooking is creating something that complicated, cooking will seem hard to them. But if they think that cooking is something extremely simple, which, okay, is challenging, but it's something that they believe they can make, such as boiling water, they'll think that it's easy. And that's how programming is. The actual like programming has so many areas in it. Some of them are easier to understand, some of them are more complicated, and depending on how deep you go, that's how much more challenging it gets. And that's why some people think that it's hard as a whole, but as a whole, it's not hard. The hard part of programming is the problem solving, which is like programming is like the body and problem solving is like the heart. It's like those two can't live without each other. So it's something that you can avoid, and the only way by which programming gets easy is when you actually have a good understanding of it and you have gained that confidence till you feel that, okay, I feel or believe that I can learn anything that I set my heart on, or okay, I know that I'm not good at this part of programming, but I'm really good at that part of programming, and that's okay. When you get to that type of mentality or thought process, then it's when programming actually might feel easy for you. And already I've seen so many problems that there are very few problems that you can't really figure an answer for, or the problems that you can figure an answer for are problems that others haven't figured out an answer for as well. So these are some things to think about when it comes to programming. And another reason why people think that programming is hard is because they haven't really like how can I say it? I'll say they haven't really built that part of their brain that has to do with the logical, arithmetical type of thinking that is needed for certain types of programming. A lot of people say you don't need math in programming, you don't need to be good in math and so forth, and then they have some other people that say you have to be good in maths. But let me tell you something, if you're good in maths, programming is easier. That is something that I've realized, and that I think is because there is a huge connection between the type of area in the brain that you use when you're solving math problems and the one that you use when you're coding programming or you're involved in that problem solving thinking. And mathematics is like problem solving. You get an equation or a type of problem and then you have to solve it. And the same with physics is again, at least at school, what we do at school with physics is usually problem solving. They give you a problem and then you have to figure out with the rules that you know, you have to try to connect them in your brain and figure out the solution. So that is the type of mindset that is needed in programming, and that's why it's easier. Like, programming gets easier when you are good in mathematics. I've observed that, like, people that are good in maths usually feel that programming is easy. Also, another thing is that logical side of the brain. Now, this thing called left or right brain, like, researchers have debunked that it doesn't exist, but that doesn't mean that there are not certain parts of the brain that are connected to certain functions. So when it comes to like logical things, there is a part of the brain that is connected to such type of functions, but it might not be on the left side, or it might not be on the right side. It might be in between, or it might be it's just a complicated thing. And the same thing doesn't happen only with programming. It happens with language. Like, there are certain parts of your brain that have to do with language. That's why when people damage their brain, different aspects of your body can be affected as well, depending on what side of the body that part of the brain that got damaged was controlling. So some people have a very strong background in mathematics. Either because from a very young age they have been involved in things that have to do with like developing that problem solving skill, or that mathematical computational type of thinking, such as playing chess, learning how to play chess from a young age, or doing things that involve maths. I actually learned mathematics or solving maths from a very young age, or doing anything that is really closely tied to mathematics. So if you do that, that is what I've realized. If you have a child and you do that, you develop that side of their brain, there's a high chance that growing up they will not struggle as much, especially if they don't have like any learning difficulties in addition with mathematics and everything that is closely related to mathematics, which are a good number of subjects. Now, I'm not telling you this from a like psychological standpoint or something like that, so you might want to take that with a grain of salt. It's just something that I've observed by looking at people, and by looking at myself, and by studying things, I guess, by trying things. Yes. So you might see that if you go back to your childhood years, the things that you were very much involved with, that you were doing decently, are things that growing up now, you might not have that much of a challenge doing when asked to do it again. And that's something that you might eventually see more in a more obvious way when you get to university, that there are certain things that are more easy for you and certain things that are harder, and those that are easier are like things that you had a tendency to have worked with in the past, or actually have a natural inclination towards. Another thing is that, yes, some people do have a natural inclination towards certain things, and that is what some people call talent. Like, some people have talent for specific things, and like, you can't do something about that. Some people find certain things easier because it's just a talent that they have. And then other people don't have a talent, but they have worked hard on it and have become really good at it. So now they're comfortable enough to believe that they are good at that thing. So there are many ways to go around this thing. But in a nutshell, the whole thing that I'm trying to say is that programming itself is not easy. It's not like difficult. But yes, I can neither say that it's easy. The truth is somewhere in between. There are aspects of programming that are very easy to learn, and then there are aspects of programming that are very complicated. But if you can see a problem, a technical problem, and feel comfortable with the discomfort of solving a problem and struggling and debugging and all those type of things, then programming will be something that you enjoy more. But you don't need to solve problems with programming. There are so many ways by which you can solve problems that have nothing to do with coding. So don't think that that's the only way by which you can solve problems, but that is one of the many ways by which you can solve the problems that we have in the world. And it's up to you to decide what you want to do. If you want to learn how to program and code, and this is what you want to do, then you have to make up your mind that programming, a huge part of programming is problem solving, and solving problems is not necessarily an easy thing. So knowing that I'm going to solve problems, I accept the challenge and I'll just do the best that I can. You might solve problems that have been solved before by figuring out, doing research and using other people's solutions, but sometimes the higher you get or the deeper you get, you might figure out problems that no one has solved. And when you are able to solve those type of problems, usually that is when you become like an inventor. A lot of inventors have solved problems that no one else have solved before, and in a very impactful way. So these are some things that I want you to know about programming. And I mean, sometimes it can get discouraging with when you are stuck on a problem or things like that. When that happens, take a break. Like, that is the best thing that you can do. Take a break. And that is what I do. I take a lot of breaks. Let me be honest with you. I take a lot of breaks, not just from programming, from various other things. Because the brain you need to let your brain rest in order to be able to process information in the most optimal way. And one way you do that is by allowing it to rest. There is no way out. So just make sure that you have a balance and control, self-control and discipline, and you'll be fine. So, is programming easy? It can be easy. Is programming hard? It can be hard. But the real truth is that the truth is somewhere in between. And I hope with this that you see things in a different way, and you can use this to decide what you want to do or make out of programming, or what your own opinion is. So have a great day. Bye.